Lemon 64 presents a Playguide and video review. Sit back and enjoy the show.
Hey there once again, welcome to another Lemon Tube 64 play guide and review on behalf of lemon64.com. In this episode we'll be taking a look at a fan review, and yes, this was voted for by a number of fans on the Lemon64 website. Here's what they chose: Aztec Challenge, developed by Paul Norman and published by Cosme in 1983. In this game we play as an Aztec warrior, and we've been given the job of traversing 7 challenges, and once we've completed those 7 challenges we'll hopefully gain the respect of our elders. But unfortunately those 7 challenges are quite tricky, and the player will obviously die many times playing this game. And you can see in this arcade-like attraction mode sequence there are all kinds of hazards and dangers waiting for the player. Luckily, we are given infinite continues in this game, so we can play and play ad infinitum until we get bored, and there should hopefully be enough on offer with those 7 levels to keep us entertained. Level 1 is known as the Gauntlet, and it's probably the most famous level, and many players have only seen this level in the entire game. In this level we have to run forward towards the temple, which will appear on the horizon, and we can pull the controller back to duck and push forward to jump. Pressing fire to enter the game, all we need to do is duck and jump over these hazards thrown by the natives of our village. And yes, there are lots of natives in this corridor, and at this stage these hazards don't appear very fast, but it is quite unnerving there because the sound effects actually begin before that spear is being thrown, so you never know whether that is going to be a high or a low spear. And in this game, unfortunately, you cannot change your mind. So if it's a high spear and you jump, then you'll jump into it, and if it's a low spear and you crouch, obviously you're going to crouch right into it. And so this can be infuriating. You have to get it right first time, every time, and it doesn't matter if you delay those controls slightly, because that spear will be delayed as it rolls across that screen, so it does give you a few milliseconds to observe that thing and decide what to do. Also hear the music also changes as we progress through these levels, and when you get to hear the whole music all the way through, that means we are towards the end of the level, and then we move on to the next one. It's great to see the temple there slowly getting bigger. That gives a slight illusion that we're making progress along these desert sands, and at this stage, as long as we take our time and anticipate those things, we move on to the second level. Now that we've reached the temple, the next job is to climb and ascend the stairs. So we have to move left and right, whilst a number of boulders will be thrown down the steps, and we must avoid those. So I apologise at this stage for graphics glitches there on my emulation, and the real game, the full game on tape, never did that. But I hope you can see that I've died there. Well, sugar cubes unfortunately kill us on this level, and they might be ice cubes for all I know, but whatever they are, those white boulders and those blocks will be thrown, and all we have to do is to avoid those, and it gives us precious little time. And sometimes those things appear at random, and sometimes it throws us down a corridor that we can't actually get out of. So these things aren't predetermined, unfortunately. If you touch those things yet again by 1 pixel, or even if you don't anticipate those blocks as they fall, then you're going to get yourself killed. In this game, I think the player has 4 lives, and after being killed 4 times, then they have to restart that section of the game all over again. There is no going back to section 1. Yes, we get to retry every section unlimited times until we get it right, or unless we get bored. You can see the graphics and the animation is reasonably well drawn, especially considering it was 1983. So the levels do change from level to level, but the music doesn't change. Well, that's not so bad because the music is fairly memorable. And, well, picked the wrong avenue again there. That was my fourth last life. Let's try that again. Let's see if we can get any further along those steps. But yes, the graphics are reasonably well drawn and the music is certainly memorable. As for playability, well, at this stage it can be a little hit and miss. On the first stage we were given milliseconds to get out of the way of those things, and it seems to be the same story on this level as well, but not all the levels are the same, and some levels are very easy. And once the player gets a rhythm and keeps on the move in this game, sometimes staying over there onto the right hand side is the easiest thing to do, and then the player can just dodge and move on that side of the screen and ignore the rest. So that's my tip for this section, and if the player manages to do that, then it won't be long before they get to the end. This game was published by Cosmi, as in Cosmic without the C, and this game was also published on the Atari 2600, but it was a completely different game and programmed by a completely different programmer. On the C64, the programmer was Paul Norman. Paul coded this game and created the graphics and the music as well, because he used to be a musician himself, so he created everything from the bottom to the top. And on this level we are slowly rising from the bottom to the top, and it must be a very tall building. Between each level the game gives us a break, and it also gives us the heads up as to what might be happening on the next level, and you can see there level 3 out of the 7. On the next level we gain entrance to the temple itself, and here we must move from room to room, and we can stop and we can also jump over things. So using that simple mechanic of stopping and jumping over things, sometimes it's a good idea to stop when we enter a room before we get killed. And sometimes if we stop just at the entrance to that room, we can pause and take a look and decide what to do for the best. And we can only jump and stop, and so those mechanics will have to be used. And sometimes the game plays a little unfairly, but at this stage again the play speed is slow enough so that we can react, and again these rooms are well drawn and animated enough to give the illusion of running through a temple. Maybe not as smooth as Prince of Persia, but then again for 1983 this was probably the Prince of Persia of its day. Level 4 sees an often very tricky level indeed. And on this level we have to run along a corridor avoiding all kinds of vermin. And when I say vermin I mean snakes and spiders and scorpions and that kind of thing. So you can see there again it runs smoothly, and there is animation there. We can actually do a high jump and a medium jump, and so the high jump is probably the best thing to use, and then you don't get killed. And use the medium jump if you need to hop, skip and jump over things like stepping stones, because the medium jump is actually quite small and you won't get to jump very far with it. So you can see there I'm avoiding things, but in this game it's so easy to die, and sometimes those things are placed in just the wrong position so that even a long jump can't save us, and things just fall from the ceiling and we die. So sometimes this game appears unfair, and this level in particular feels unfair to me because these things drop at random. You can't memorize these levels, so let's press fire again and let's see if we can get any further. Even though this level is probably my least favourite in the entire game, I do have a soft spot for Aztec Challenge. I did have this on the Commodore 64 and I did play it, and I have actually completed it, or at least got onto the night levels, so I think I completed it. The game presents itself in 4 rounds, and so we will have to play these 7 levels 4 times, and each time they will get harder. But for the moment we are still on supposedly the easy level, and all that we need to watch out for is the ridiculous random timings of the programmer. And as I say, of all the levels, this is definitely the most unfair, particularly if you get an animal or a critter right on top of your head and you can't jump and you can't get out of the way of that thing. So this level is random, and the player will just have to put up with those randomnesses and those random factors, and sometimes you can't even complete this level, and sometimes it appears relatively easy. So let's persevere with our infinite continues, and I think we still have 2 lives left, but if we die at any point, then we'll have to go back all the way back to the start of the level, even if we got right to the end of that level, and the music will reset and we'll have to do it all over again. To remind us, the music will also be reset, but when that jingle ramps up a gear, then we know that we're almost at the end and we haven't too far to go. This game may appear pretty simple, and the controls are pretty simple. Usually the levels only require us to push in 2 directions, only up or down, and so we can stop and jump, and we can duck under things as well, and that's just about it. So 2 directional controls there so far on these levels. Moving through the temple, we find the very top room is listed with traps, and the exit of which is along a walkway. We have to find a safe path through it. So let's press fire, check that room out, and you can see it's a very much Indiana Jones type room, and maybe the Last Crusade, even though the Last Crusade came out in 1989 and this is an 83 release. But you can see there, one of these traps will kill us eventually unless we find our way through, and these could actually be blow darts, and that would remind us of Raiders of the Lost Ark, released in 1981. So it looks like I've managed to get myself through in one piece, and that's that level over. That's the shortest level in the entire game, and it's definitely the easiest given the infinite continues. And the next level isn't too hard either. In this level we have to dodge piranhas, and if we press fire we can actually duck under the water, which means we are invulnerable, and that's pretty strange given the fact that the piranhas are already under the water, and that would seem to make us more vulnerable. But there you go, if you press fire then you will sink, and if you get hit by those things then you will die. The aim is to press forward on the controller and move from screen to screen, and the music will change depending on the progress that we make. So if we stay on the same screen forever, then the music won't change, and so you'll have to dodge those things. Luckily there is a safe spot there just on the edge of that screen, and if we venture into that safe spot then we can time our ascent, and whilst we are only just appearing on the bottom there, that means we've only a few pixels on which we can get hit. So it's best to move very quickly and to move forward, and moving in a straight line in the centre of the screen there probably gives us the best chance at avoiding all these razor sharp teeth. And you can be very lucky at missing those things, and you can slide around those things and be instantly lucky in this game. So let's just do that and make our way while that sun appears to shine. And yes, the first 2 stages in this game are in the day, and the second 2 stages of this game are in the night, and when we loop the game that's what we'll get, a day to night change. But this is the last level, this is the level 7 before we loop for the first time. This level is called the bridge, and this is the bridge between the end of the game and the start of it all over again. And so freedom is only a hop, skip and a jump away. If we pull the joystick left then we'll do a medium jump, if we pull it back then we'll do a low jump, and if we push that forward that will actually do a high jump, and if we don't then we'll die. It's very easy to die every stage in this game, but if we push forward there that will jump over 3 of those gaps. If we pull it back then that will jump over 1 gap, and if we pull it left that will jump over 2. So as soon as we see those gaps appearing there in that walkway, again reminding us of Indiana Jones, then we have to decide which way to pull that controller. If we push in the correct direction then we'll survive, and sometimes if there are extra platforms it doesn't matter if we jump a 2 gap with a 3 gap jump, but if we don't manage to jump that 3 gap and we only pull a 2 gap jump then obviously we'll die. So sometimes it helps to jump almost on the edge, not right on the edge because you might just walk off there, but almost on the edge, and that gives us just enough room to land and select our next maneuver. If we make the wrong choice of the 3 then it's a long drop into the abyss of pain, and even infinite continues on this particular level doesn't make it any easier, because sometimes the player can get really far in this level and only to die only at the last minute, and so they have to go back and do this level all over again from scratch. So out of all the levels, level 1 and level 7 is the most infuriating to start all over again from scratch, and maybe the unfairnesses of level 4, when we avoid all those critters in the corridor, also ranks up there with the unfairnesses, although that level is so random, sometimes it's a doddle. So, taking a look at the history of this game, it was coded and the music was created by Paul Norman, who appeared on the Commodore 64 with Bowling, with High Tech, no, not the Yogi's Great Escape Hanna-Barbera High Tech, but another High Tech in 1983, and that was very lowly received. He then moved on to the excellent 8 out of 10 Forbidden Forest, again in 1983, moving over to Cosmi. He then produced Aztec Challenge in 1983, moving on to Caverns of Kafka in 84, Super Huey in 85 with the Amiga conversion in 86, Super Huey 2 appeared on the Commodore 64 in 86, Defcon 5 appeared in 1987 with the Amiga release in 88, and Defcon 6 appeared in 1988, and that's basically the last we heard of Paul Norman. The Cosmi Corporation was founded around 1980 by George Johnson out there in Carson, California. Most of the games created for Cosmi were actually created by Paul Norman. They also created Richard Petty's Talladega in 1985, moving on to The President is Missing in 1988, and The Unbelievable Chomp in 1989, the world's first and probably last fish tank sim, where fish basically gobble each other up, and if you don't win the game you get flushed down the toilet. So a very interesting game there by Cosmi, who had a high volume, low cost production standard, and on the Commodore 64 that wasn't particularly hard, and Super Huey was a massive hit, and Defcon 5 had a massive following as well, particularly with the remake on the Amiga. So Aztec Challenge may have been one of the forerunners to bigger and better adventure games later on, but I think for its day it still has some charm, even though it can be annoying in some places. At least the game gives us infinite continues and at least 3 or 4 lives on every stage, so it means that we can continue and we don't often get bored. But we can unfortunately get infuriated with this game, just with ourselves and our own inadequate playing skills. And you can see the scores there will keep continuing as we keep retrying these levels, and we can even have a 2-player, and 2 players won't feature on screen at once. No, you'll have to take turns in 2-player mode to get through these levels one by one. Moving on to the scores, Commodore user gave this game 80%, Personal Computer Games also gave this 80%, and your Commodore gave this 80%. With only Zap giving this 72% in October 1987, which was the budget release. I think this game was released at more or less a budget price on release, and I think the 7 levels are easy enough for the player to progress through, and they're absolutely not unplayable like some early Commodore 64 games that I've played. Finally get to the edge of this huge long bridge there at the end of level 7, then we get to play all 7 levels all over again from the beginning, and this time the levels are slightly quicker. During the second round of play never really gets boring because the timings have been tightened up. And so the player will find that the play gets, well, a little faster and a little harder every time they loop around. And as I say, if the player manages to complete the game, then they will have looped the game 4 times. And then all you get is a presentation screen with the Cosmi logo, which is actually the spinning blue vortex that you saw at the beginning of the game. And then it returns to the title screen. so there isn't much there to keep the player going, particularly when these levels are so hard that the speed is unbelievable. But you can see on the second round it's not too bad, and it gives the player some impetus to continue, knowing that they can progress and that they've gone through this level and this game already. It's just that once one thing goes wrong, then everything goes wrong, and you'll find yourself back to the title page all over again in no time. And so making one small mistake there by pushing up when we needed to pull back, or pulling back when we needed to push up, well, it's very easy to do, and having to go all the way back there with no checkpoints, and then, well, it's kind of infuriating, but by this stage you expect the game to be slightly harder. And so you won't see many long plays on YouTube, because by the time the player has got to the end of the game, it really is quick. And I have got to the nighttime levels, again making me think that I have completed this game, and with Infinite Continues that is entirely possible. But let's fast forward past and beyond all my feeble efforts to gain any further progress on this level, and let's take a look at that level 4 nighttime level and see how hard that will be. Yes, by the last level it really does get borderline impossible unless you practice this game over and over again, and I certainly haven't done that when you're actually witnessing one of those long plays that I found on YouTube. Everything about this game is now very much harder, and the player will really have to be on their toes, and you've seen the frame rates there keep up with our actions very well. Given the fact that this is a 1983 game, I think it's been well coded, and it stands up to the rigours of this fast frame rate. And look at that, animals and fish and death traps plenty there is enough to keep the player going. And these nighttime levels add yet another element, even though that's just a simple colour change, and that's the end of the game. So thank you once again for viewing a play guide and review. Hope to see you again sometime soon.